It is the evening of the day of January the 30th, 2025, and anyone who loved Marianne Faithful will immediately recognise where I took the opening of that sentence from, the song As Tears Go By. I ain't gonna cry, but I will admit that 15 minutes ago when I heard the news that Marianne has died, it saddened me immediately and immensely for countless reasons. I remember the first time I saw Marianne on TV. She was singing This Little Bird. I wasn't even in my teens and I thought she was one of the most beautiful women I'd ever seen. How was I to know that a quarter century later I'd interview her for the first of 5 times and find that she instantly became one of my favourite interviewees and was a hugely intelligent, highly artistic and fabulously challenging woman. In fact, Marianne challenged me from the outset. At the time I was a relatively new interviewer, and she called a halt to the interview, claiming it was too much like psychotherapy. Then she scolded me, saying I had no right to probe into her psychology. However, the next day Marianne phoned, laughed, half apologised. We met again, picked up where we left off, and in the end we had astoundingly in-depth conversations on countless occasions over the following 15 years. The tapes we made together were remarkable, and here's the irony. This very morning, I sent an email to a production company in London who contacted me about those tapes with the idea of using them as the basis of a documentary, like some of my tapes were used for documentaries on Richard Harris, Boyzone, whoever. But as I sit here tonight in my home, which is not far from St. Stephen's Green in Dublin, my fondest memory of Marianne is of an afternoon we met by chance in the Green, and after a few minutes of chatting, she asked me if I'd like to go into the bushes with her. The 12-year-old child, I can still be at heart, nearly screamed out loud, yes, 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 like some demented male Molly Bloom. But I shut him up quickly, and delighted in the idea that Marianne was actually asking me to step out of public view so I could share a joint she wanted to smoke on that beautiful summer's day. I can still hear her throaty laugh. Up until the last time we met, Marianne remained one of the most fascinating women I ever encountered, in or beyond the world of celebrity interviewing. May her soul rest in peace.
What? That there were a couple of key issues that I felt were gaps in the interview.
That I may or may not be able to help.
All right, no, that's absolutely...
I'm not sure, because you have to understand that I don't feel any need to explain myself.
Right.
I don't really suffer too much from what people think of me, you know?
Right, okay.
I don't really care.
Right. Okay, well, what the interview comes across as after, it's pretty long as it is.
Yeah.
Is what I was trying to make it true to the show and true to what I thought you see your music as,
yeah.
And the centre of your art, which is essentially a story of transcendence.
Well, yes.
Right, so...
Dodgy thing to say in itself.
Well, yeah, but that was a quote you made at the very end, and I thought it was a key quote, so
well, it was, but I regretted it afterwards. I hate saying stuff like that, because I do think that things have to be revealed themselves. It's not really something, I don't think, that one can talk about.
Right, yeah.
That's the problem.
No, but I think if you say that your friends had told you, that distances it. You know, it's not as if...
Well, that's true. I mean, I would never have called
right.
it that on my own. But
no, but because that sounds almost pretentious and putting a weight on your own work that maybe would almost invalidate it.
Yeah.
But to say that this is the view that's been put to me by my friends, and I hope it is true, which was your quote.
Yeah.
That to me,
well, that's good, yeah.
you know, gives it a context. So
that's fair enough, yeah.
So that's the centre, and the start then is to take that whole. Carmel said that she thought I wasn't giving you the proper credibility as a recording artist, as an artist. But the whole context of the interview is to take things like that ridiculous Rolling Stone dismissal and turn it inside out without even saying it.
Yeah.
Which is to go through what you've done, as we did.
Yeah.
And to say, well, if you read that review and you ever believed it, by the end of this interview you'll see it's complete trash. So that was the angle. But the only thing that's missing is that the whole thrust of it is turning what were negative impulses into creative impulses.
Yes.
Tapping the potential darkness to fire your art, if you know what I mean.
We have to There
Okay.
are certain avenues that I am not prepared to go down, which are, I mean, there is no ultimate horror in my childhood, except the normal stuff that any child from an only child from a broken home might go through, and that really is not so terrible. It's something that many people have to deal with.
Right. Well, actually, I mean, that whole section as it stands to me is totally valid, and that's what comes across.
Good.
That is, if someone wants to put that, coming through it is all these romantic interpretations of your life.
Well, I know. I mean, I realised that afterwards. I thought, well, what was it that was so distressing for me?
Right.
And it's that. It's using all this stuff as metaphor.
Right, but all
I
that,
find so distressing, and yeah.
well, all that I've attempted to undo.
Good.
It's like we set it up and you say, okay, if that was the reading of the childhood, out the window. If this feeding into a myth of sexual neuroses was there, out the window.
Yeah.
And this is why. And
People do make those implications all the time.
well, that's, as I said to you, that's what I'd kept coming up against. And it was either, is it the truth or is it a superficial reading of a person's history?
I'm just reading a very interesting book about all this stuff. I mean, it's not exactly the same thing, but have you ever read it? It's Illness as Metaphor.
No.
Susan Sontag.
Susan Sontag, yeah, I know her.
She's
Yeah.
so great. And
Yeah.
she got cancer.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And she's talking about the moral judgments on illness. How TB is somehow an illness of romance and sensitivity and intensity.
All right.
And cancer is judged as a repression of feelings, and you get ill because of that. She's saying it's insane to take illness, even mental illness, which is now, she thinks that mental illness has taken the place of TB in the modern time,
Right.
And people who are mentally ill are somehow vulnerable and romantic and isolated and precious.
Right, well, that goes back to the reading of the romantic artist in history, doesn't it?
Well, I think so, And then you have to remember that there's a long, long, long tradition of the addict and the alcoholic artist.
Oh, right.
Which
Yeah.
I also don't subscribe to.
Right, that they lead to the art.
Well, yeah, I don't believe that, for me to create broken English, I had to be a heroin addict.
Right. No, but you see, I was kind of almost bypassing the manifestation because you hit the root when you talked about this self-hatred and this kind of detestation.
Well, that's quite obvious to me,
But not everybody can analyse beyond the actual manifestation.
No, nor can I, really, but we'll have a go.
Okay.
I don't really understand. And, you can see that this is all completely fraught with dangerous stuff.
Absolutely.
And my fear is, okay, it doesn't wash with me to say, Marianne, these are misinterpretations of your life and your art. Do you care to correct them? Because my actual feelings are maybe very nihilistic about it, very, very negative, that people are shit and there's no way you can change them.
Right.
And I know that's just something, that's a feeling I've had now for a year or two, and it gets stronger and stronger. And I believe that I will get over this feeling, in fact, I already do. I keep expecting people to be slime.
Right.
And of course they are sometimes. And most of the time, people behave really well.
Right.
And I am always being wrong about this. Do you see?
Well, I think it's what you said too, that nobody is A or B. It's like we're slime trying to be saints, or we're saints coming back to being slime.
Yeah, but I do think that while we live in this duality, we're going to have a lot of problems.
And a lot of fun.
Yeah. I suppose so.
Okay, well, look, let me put to you the 5 sections, the 5 tiny gaps.
Right. I'll give it a whirl.
All right, thank you. Well, one was working backwards from strange weather. There was a quote in the Penguin Encyclopedia of Pop that you said that was the first album done without chemicals.
Yes.
Right, that's okay. I just didn't want to put that in and it not be true.
That's true.
Right, so the second point was that, now you've almost stressed this a moment ago, but that accepting the darker side of your nature led to the fire that burns through broken English, as on why'd you do it and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would say that my recovery, really, from my illness, which I consider to be addiction,
Right.
Started with broken English.
Right.
I don't think it really started when I put down alcohol and drugs. I think it started before that.
Okay.
And it started with somehow becoming more myself and showing myself more. being myself.
Well, that actually leads into the second question, which is, you say that that this recovery happened, but was it through like an actual therapy, self-analysis, or through just, the drugs? Was it cold turkey or what?
Well, it was cold turkey, yes. But I have had a lot of help, for sure. I really have. I went into treatment, as you know,
Right.
in 1985. And that's where it started, but it didn't work right away at all. When I left treatment, I drank immediately.
All right, yeah.
And 3 months later, I actually got high. And I really got very scared, and I thought that I was on a track there, that every few months I would probably get high.
All right, yeah.
But that didn't happen. I had my last drug on May the 25th, 1986.
Yeah.
And I also went into therapy.
At the same time.
Psychotherapy.
Right.
And please say that I am incredibly happy not to be in therapy any longer. And this is why I hate this kind of stuff, because it reminds me so much of therapy.
All right.
I loathed it.
What was it? Freudian? Jungian? Freudian?
Yeah.
Psychoanalysis?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're happy to be out of it, but you also don't regret the fact you went through it to get...
Oh, God, no. I mean, he was an exceptional man, my shrink,
Right.
He's not like a normal Freudian therapist. I don't know. I mean, he was just very down to earth, for one thing.
Right.
And that's really helped me, as you can see.
Right. Yeah.
It's really given me a grounding to stand on, a sort of ordinary level, which I had never had. I had always been either very inflated and much grander than anything else,
Right.
trying to romanticize and mythicize myself. I mean, I think that a lot of this problem here with my press has got to be laid at my own doorstep.
All right, right.
I mean, there are all sorts of little things that I have just made up.
Right.
One of them is that I had TB as a child, which I didn't.
Okay, right.
I mean, what the fuck was that about? Trying to spiritualize myself or something.
Susan Sontag would like that one.
Well, I know. I've just been reading it, and I've been sort of blushing as I read all her stuff about TB. I mean, it's just ludicrous. And I just made that up.
Right.
And there it goes, off into the myth,
Right, self-romanticism.
Yes.
Right from...
And of an obsession with my own self and my own image, of how I presented myself to the world. That's why I always enjoyed working with the media, because it was fun for me. I mean, it still is, actually.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
That's going right back to when you first started. That was a trait.
Very early lie, yes.
Right. And those kind of self-romanticizing projections coming from you.
I also think that a lot of my deep and burning desire to be a real junkie, which I did, I mean, I actually lived on the street in London for 2 years without a home.
Right.
Just, living what I thought was this great romantic life.
Oh, right. So that's why you see the whole area of romanticizing these things as fraught
really
with...
repulsive, I see it now,
Right.
I don't see it as evil or wrong, really. I just find it I feel as if somehow I'd been degrading myself.
Right.
And diminishing myself as a human being. I don't mean to sound so pompous, but that's kind of where I end up. And of course, how do I know what would have happened if I hadn't lived like that? And I don't regret it at all.
Right, it was a learning process.
But I still think that the imagination could have done it too. I don't know, but I don't know if I had to be a morphine addict to write System Morphine. Maybe. But do you see how dangerous that is?
I do. And
because it's saying to people, well, if you go and do all these things, then you'll be like me. And I don't want to do that.
Right, you can create similar art and similar...
Well, I believe I have to take some responsibility for that. I've been a disgraceful role model for people.
Right.
And I know that.
Right, okay. Now that all makes a lot of sense. It's very similar, in fact, which aside from the interview, I interviewed Dion. Dion DiMucci?
Yeah.
And he spoke in very much the same way about this romantic image of the rock star.
Yes.
And how he is one of the original 50s role models for people. With a lot of rock stars knew, well, he had it since 14 and he's survived, created great music. That's a ridiculous myth. And he said too that he doesn't believe that the drugs ever led to creativity.
No, I don't think so I mean, my real honest, from my direct experience, and this is really my truth, is that I managed to do as much as I did, not because of drugs and alcohol, but in spite of.
Right.
And it was like a sort of an incredible handicap, I think.
Right. Okay, well then it's just two last questions which arise out of readings. They're both from that kind of story of Pop, the big volume that came out weekly.
Yeah.
Right, and one was related to the actual suicide attempt in '69.
Well, you know, I'm not even sure if that was a conscious attempt. I don't remember really. I mean, I have memories of wanting to take some kind of revenge on people, places, and things, you know. And I think that it's very natural for me, the way I was then, that I would want, if I wanted to get some kind of revenge, well, how would I do it? I would hurt myself. You know? That's exactly what I would do. I do remember feelings of incredible self-pity and sort of just disgust and feelings like, I'll show them, that kind of thing. You know? The really silly, childish stuff that makes people do these things.
It was like an extension of the Romanticism too.
Well, it's even more infantile. You know?
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, it was just, I don't know. I mean, I was not a mature, okay, I'm going to check out now sort of thing.
Right. Well, their connection was that you were haunted by some images of Brian Jones or something, which links it to the other connection.
Well, I did have those images in my coma. I mean, that's all quite true. I have not made that up.
All right. Okay.
And it's I suppose. I mean, you know, I am not a shrink, and I don't know, but I think that had been a very traumatic thing for me, and it was obviously on my mind.
Right.
And that must have been why I had those dreams.
Okay. Right. Okay.
But I don't think it's as simple as that, you know, because of Brian. I don't think I was grieving. I mean, I think how can I put it? I'm sure I was grieving Brian Jones' death, but much more than that, I was grieving some loss of my own.
Well, they said that you had actually seen yourself, not Brian Jones, in a mirror, as opposed to an image of him.
I had an identity crisis. That's what it's called.
All right.
Where you look in the mirror. It happens a lot, not to me anymore, but I think it does happen to people, and nobody really, and I certainly didn't understand it at the time. And the way I've explained it is that. But what I think was more frightening was not that I don't really remember seeing Brian Jones. What I do remember is looking at myself, which was always my way of checking who I was, and I never had any sense of being myself. So I mean, narcissistically, I went to the mirror, and what I saw wasn't me.
Right.
And that may be because I had anorexia and I was on drugs and I was in a terrible state.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, talk about projection. It's like the ultimate projection again. It's all interrelated, isn't it?
And the other thing is that I probably believed a lot of the stories and the stuff that was written about me. And I also had incredibly nasty letters around that time.
That was actually the last question. The last question was that the process seems to have begun after that February '67 raid, when you started receiving abusive letters and threats to kidnap your child.
Yeah, that was terrible. And the letters, I'm afraid I did actually believe them.
Did you?
I really did. I just didn't have any defenses for this stuff, you know. It really was terrible. And I still have feelings of strong sort of, I mean, I won't live in England, you know. I hardly ever go to England. I only go to see my mother. I go quite a lot, actually, because she's ill. But I just feel not wanted.
Was that like the moral majority responding against the lifestyle and everything?
I would say it was some kind of collective thing.
Yeah.
And it's only recently that I have accepted personally that I don't have to live within the collective. I can remain outside the collective quite happily.
Right. But
and in fact, I realized eventually that it was an honor to be outside the collective.
Because they're all shits.
No, I don't mean that. They're not.
We all are, then.
Well, we all have, I mean, it's true we all have that part of us. But I really don't mean that. I mean that being within, loved and accepted inside the group group is one way,
Right.
and maybe for if you really want to create something or do anything, it's best to be outside the collective and not have that feeling of being included and all the rest of it.
Okay, look, that is well. You can see the reading was close to what was true,
Yes.
but I'd rather have you saying that than me.
I hope it doesn't all sound too pompous.
No, it doesn't. I mean, the only person who's seen it is my girlfriend. She read it last night, and she said she remembers seeing you on the Late Show around the time of Dreaming My Dreams and all that.
Yeah.
And she said she was always fascinated by wanting to know your story, and she said you came across incredibly strong. That the sense from it is strength.
Good.
And she went back to the albums with renewed interest. So I thought that
nice.
was we were listening to Broken English here last night. So.
Okay.
So, there was one last tiny element was, in relation to Strange Weather, you did say that it's more Hal's tastes than mine.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, it is really.
All right. Okay.
I like it very much.
Right.
But it's not, I've been struggling a lot with Hal recently. I love him very much. He's one of my best friends. But this kind of, there's a whole group of people who would like to push me into sort of German cabaret type stuff.
Right.
And I won't do it because I don't believe in it. It's not me. I know I could do that stuff,
Right.
but I'm not going to be doing it. I mean, I love to use little bits of it like we did,
Right.
but it's just too dark.
Well, I think that's what comes across, is that you responded more favourably to the reading of Broken English, which says you turn dark into light or dark into energy.
Yeah.
Whereas when it's just dark, like Strange Weather, it can be almost oppressive. I know it's supposed to make you feel unsettled and get out and do something.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we didn't do Strange Weather with that intention. I
Right.
really was very depressed when we did it.
Right, okay.
And it was easy for me to make a record like that. But even at the time, I knew it was too dark,
Right.
And that's Hal. That's him. I mean, he is a very dark person, and he loves all that stuff. I personally find it a bit affected.
Oh, all right.
And a bit old, I don't want to go back on old ground so much.
Right, to be seen.
Especially old European ground.
Right, to be seen as the Dietrich of the 90s, as I saw
No,
somebody
man,
describe
no
you.
way. I'd
Yeah.
rather, I would stop. I really would stop singing.
Right.
That was my only option.
He's rather the Marianne Faithful of the 90s.
Yes, I think so.
Okay, I can leave it there. Thank you very much for getting back to me, and
Thanks a
I'm
lot.
sure it'll be okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for your help.
Let me see. When is it coming up?
It will be out Thursday week.
Thursday week.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right, my dear.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Hi, Joe Jackson here again. I thank you for listening to this edition of the Joe Jackson Interviews podcast. If you want to read some of my articles and some of my interviews with Marianne, check out my website, joejacksoninterviewer.com. Thanks again for listening.